Hi, my name is Michael. I'm a producer and mixing engineer at Zero Hour Studio in Coleraine. I've been asked by Mid and East Antrim Borough Council to host this free masterclass on home recording tips for solo artists. My goal today is to teach you recording techniques that you can implement immediately from home, but more importantly, I'm going to teach you the technical know-how so you understand why I use these techniques and how they can help you overcome common issues when recording. I know the technical stuff can be a bit boring, but it's the most valuable part of this class. If you only mimic these recording techniques but don't understand why you're using them, you won't be able to adapt when problems inevitably arise. Before we begin, there's some basic equipment that you'll need to follow along. Don't worry, you don't need a ton of expensive equipment. These techniques are helpful whether you have £100 or £100 recording setup. So what you'll need a microphone, a computer or laptop, a DAW. This stands for Digital Audio Workstation. For example, Logic, Pro Tools, Ableton, GarageBand, any of these are fine. You also need a recording interface. This converts the analog signal from your microphone into a digital signal that your DAW can read. You need a set of headphones, a microphone stand, and an XLR cable. And that's it. Anything else you have is an added bonus. I won't be discussing what brands you should or shouldn't buy. Most gear selection comes down to budget and taste. Just look at the available options within your budget and choose a product that fits your needs and of course has good reviews. Now that you have your recording setup ready, you have two potential ways that you can record your music, live or overdubbed. Each comes with its own pros and cons. Live recording has a more organic sound, there are more flaws, but this can be a good thing. That being said, there are a lot of challenges with live recording. It's difficult to create high quality audio this way, and a big con is that you can't fix these mistakes as easily as you can with overdubbing. In the right context, these minor flaws sound good, but when poorly recorded, this will put an unnatural focus on them. On the other hand, overdubbing your audio will allow you to perfect each individual layer, as well as giving you more control over the mix. It's a much more forgiving process. In fairness, some music will naturally suit one style of recording over the other. I've seen incredible live performers that struggle in a studio environment and vice versa. Studio and live performance are two different skill sets that require individual practice to perfect. Now that we have an understanding of live versus overdubbed recording, I'm going to show you some techniques you can use in each of these settings. We'll cover live recording with one mic, live recording with two mics, and overdubbed recording. And just for fun, at the end I'm going to give you a rundown of how we record at Zero Hour. First, let's look at live recording. If you only have access to one mic, but want to record guitar and vocals live, I'll show you how to get the best results from your setup. Take your microphone and place it about 2 feet away, pointing the front of the mic towards where you will be sitting. Sit when you record guitar to keep a consistent distance from the mic, as when you stand you may sway or move as you play. Now adjust the height of the microphone to compensate for level imbalances in your performance. What I mean by this is either your guitar or vocal will naturally be louder as you perform. Generally, I find the guitar to be louder, so I put the mic a little higher, closer in line with my mouth than the front of the guitar. This will take some trial and error to get right. You can experiment with both height and distance to get a balance that works for you. You have to get this right in the way in because there's no fixing it in post with this recording technique. Be aware that when recording from home, it's unlikely that you'll have a well-treated room to record in. When a room isn't acoustically treated, it creates all sorts of imbalances. This will cause unnatural boosts and cuts in certain frequency areas and change the sound of what you're recording. For environments like this, close miking is much more effective, as it reduces the amount of room reflections that get picked up. Another way to help reduce room reflections is through your choice of microphone polar pattern. A microphone's polar pattern describes its sensitivity to sounds from varying angles. This sounds more complicated than it actually is. It's simple when you see it visually. So let's take a brief look at the 3 most common polar patterns. The most common polar pattern is cardioid. This polar pattern is designed to capture sound directly in front of the microphone and cancel sound that comes from behind. Cardioid mics have an added side effect called proximity. Proximity effect increases the low end response as the sound source moves closer to the mic. It's a popular choice for vocals and mic drums, as the proximity effect creates a warmer and fuller sound. Omnidirectional mics pick up sound evenly the whole way around the microphone. They are a popular choice for room mics and recordings where only one mic is used to capture an entire band or group's performance. Figure 8. This polar pattern is designed to pick up sound from both the front and the back of the mic, while cancelling sound from the side. This is commonly used in stereo mics as 2 figure 8 mics perpendicular to each other, will pick up the same sound field as an omnidirectional mic, except you create a wider, rounder image by panning each signal hard left and hard right respectively. Another popular use for this polar pattern is for drum overheads. You can use the cancellation spots to your advantage, resulting in a clearly defined soundscape of your drum kit. So that's the 3 most common polar patterns. There's a lot of information to absorb, but it'll make much more sense as you put it into practice. For home recordings, choose a cardio mic, more specifically a large diaphragm condenser. These are good all-rounders and sound great on practically any sound source. This is because of their flat frequency response, rear cancellation, and proximity effect. So now let's think about live recording with 2 microphones. Using 2 mics instead of 1 has its obvious benefits, such as volume control and being able to treat each source individually with EQ, compression, reverb, and so on. While adding an extra mic into the mix may sound like a no-brainer, multiple miking comes with issues that you will need to overcome. The biggest of these is phase. So, what is phase? Phase is the relationship between 2 or more microphone signals that occurs when recording a single sound source simultaneously. While sound travels extremely fast, there's a difference in how sound is picked up in different locations from a sound source. What creates phase issues is the sound arriving at each microphone at a different time. So let's have a look at how this works inside of our DAW. Okay, here are 2 different mic signals. Both of these were recorded from a single kick drum. One mic was placed inside the kick, close to the beater, while the other was placed outside the kick, in front of the drum skin. Take a look at the waveform. The top part is called a compression, while the bottom is called a rarefaction. But for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to refer to them as up versus down, so that's easier to follow. Look at the up and down parts on each of these waveforms and see how they vary from each other. Despite being the exact same sound, they look quite different. As you can see, the ups and downs are flipped and slightly out of line. When played back together, this misalignment will cause cancellation with each other, meaning the sound will be thin or warped. To make sure the 2 mic signals are working with each other, you want them to be lined up and matching. You can do this with a simple phase inversion to fix the opposite alignment. Most DAWs will have this feature, either as a standalone plugin or switchable inside the gain or EQ plugin. Once you invert it and line it up, it will look like this. Okay, let's listen to how it sounds before and after the phase has been aligned. As you can hear, so much of the low end has been brought back. It sounds fuller and more present. This fix would have taken so much time to resolve through EQ and compression, and honestly wouldn't have sounded anywhere near as good. Okay, so now I'll show you a really simple way to avoid the dreaded phase before you hit record. This was a game changer for me and drastically improved the quality of my live recordings. When setting things up, I start by having both mics horizontally in line with each other. This reduces the risk of phase to begin with. Point each mic slightly down or up towards the sound source that they are recording, and try to angle each away from the other. It doesn't need complete cancellation, you just want to reduce the amount of bleed between the 2 so you have more balance control when mixing the 2 together. The next stage is the most crucial. You need to have a set of headphones on, listening to the 2 mics together at the same volume. This should be simple enough to do in your DAW. Start talking or play some music on your phone while moving one of the mics around a little bit. As you move the mic around, you will notice that the sound will change. You're looking for a spot where your audio sounds natural and focused together. It's hard to explain what this sounds like, but you will hear the difference when doing this yourself. Once you've achieved this, you will have aligned the phase of the 2 mics within the room. Walk around the room a bit while making some noise, and if you've done this correctly, you won't hear any obvious phase issues. This means you won't need to mess with phase alignment after recording. This is much more effective and time-saving than throwing 2 mics up and trying to fix this later. An added bonus is that if you're what is called in phase within the room, it doesn't make much difference whether you move a bit during recording. As you're playing and singing, you will naturally move around, which can create phase changes if you don't sort the room phase first. If you implement this technique, your recorded audio will sound better than 99% of other home recordings that don't. Here's a short demo to show the difference. So I've grabbed another microphone. I wanted to let you hear the difference as the 2 mics are moving in and out of phase alignment. As you can hear certain points where the 2 mics are complementing each other and certain points where they're cancelling each other. This is essentially what's happening inside of a phase pedal. If you have an electroacoustic, i.e. your acoustic guitar has its own pickup, you can add a line signal directly from your guitar. This can be combined with either of the miking techniques. To record a line signal from your guitar, use direct injection, also known as a DI, as this is the cleanest way to capture your audio. Your interface may have a designated instrument input, which will also work. Use the DI signal with your mic signal to create a blend rather than the DI being your core sound. So, now for overdubbing. This is the most popular way to record from home and is often the easiest way to get a great sound. So let's take a look at how I set up a mic for recording acoustic guitar. First, let's have a look at mic choice. While a large diaphragm condenser is a great all-rounder and will create a well-balanced sound on most instruments, for acoustic guitar I prefer to use a small diaphragm condenser if available. There is one simple reason for this: off-axis pickup. A small diaphragm condenser picks up more sound from the side than a large diaphragm condenser. This means your recorded audio will represent a larger portion of the guitar itself and won't be as laser focused on the area it's pointed at. When recording an acoustic guitar on its own, you don't have to worry about audio bleed, so you can get more creative with your mic placement. But better to keep things simple. I've tried all sorts of variations: stereo versus mono, close versus far away, as well as varying locations and angles around the guitar. But my preferred placement is putting the mic about 5 inches away from the guitar, in front of and facing the 12th fret. This is where your guitar sounds most balanced, as you're hearing a blend of the boominess from the tone hole with the brightness and string noise from down the fretboard. It's also far enough away from the strumming hand that you aren't hearing loads of scraping sounds. Avoid placing your microphone directly at the tone hole. This maybe sounds counterproductive since that's where the sound is being amplified and projected from. But as I said, this is where the low end boominess and pick scratching comes from. Have a listen to how your guitar sounds when mic'd this way. If your guitar feels a little too boomy, you can move the mic down the fretboard a little and move it towards the tone hole if it feels too thin. But generally, the 12th fret is a great place to work from. You can blend a DI signal from your acoustic guitar alongside this. But as always, watch out for phase. The biggest cause of phase issues between a guitar mic and a DI is in the fact that your guitar's internal pickup or mic is always going to be at a consistent place, whereas you will naturally sway back and forth when playing. So you're constantly changing how far away you are from the mic, and thus the phase relationship with it. While this is normally subtle, if overemphasized, this can cause frustrating issues when mixing. There are 2 popular microphone choices for vocals. The first is a large diaphragm condenser, and the other is a dynamic mic. A large diaphragm condenser will sound more crisp and present, while a dynamic mic will have much more mid-range focus. If you've only one mic, then just place it as I'll instruct in the next section. If you have the choice, you can experiment with both types. Our go-to vocal mic is 0R, costs around 8 to 10k, but we've had sessions where a £400 SM7B sounded better for the vocals. It's not about how much your gear costs, it's about how you use it. When recording vocals, you don't have to do anything fancy with mic placement. Place the capsule of your mic in front of your mouth, about 3 to 5 inches back. I use the thumb to pinky rule as it's a really simple indicator. Place a pop shield about halfway between you and the mic if you have one. This will control plosives and protect your mic from damage. If you don't have a pop shield, you can either go full DIY by putting a pair of tights over a sieve and placing that in front of you, or you can angle your mic so that it's off axis from your mouth. That way it should avoid getting hit with a burst of air when you say words beginning with P. If your vocal sounds too boomy, move back a little, and if it sounds too thin, get closer to emphasize the proximity effect on a cardioid mic. So that's about it from me. Before I go, as promised, here's a look at how we set things up at 0R for recording guitar and vocals. One of my favourite ways to record a single acoustic guitar part is through a technique called mid-side, or MS. This requires a stereo mic, which must consist of 2 figure-8 mics, or you can set this up with 2 individual mics, provided at least one has a figure-8 polar pattern. The side mic in this array needs to be figure-8 for this to work properly. Mid-side processing is different in that we are using 2 signals to create a somewhat artificially wide sound through manipulation of the recorded signal. It's not just panning your 2 channels left and right. So, how do we do it? We use a Royer SF12 for our mid-side processing. It's an incredibly natural sounding stereo ribbon mic. It's great for drum overheads, room miking, and of course the mid-side array. Other than loving the sound of the mic, the reason we use a stereo mic is because it's guaranteed to be phase aligned, so setup is really quick. Set your mic up in the usual position in front of your guitar, except point only one of the mics towards it. This will be your mid mic. The other will be perpendicular to the mid mic, facing to the side. This will be your side mic. To turn this into a mid-side array, you record both mic signals at the same level. Then, inside your DAW, you create a duplicate of the side mic and invert its phase. Then you pan one hard left and the other hard right, while keeping the mid mic in the center. On Acoustic, this creates a full, natural and wide sound. It's perfect for a single guitar part, especially if it's the main feature. If it isn't the main focus, or is just there to lift a chorus, I will record with the single small diaphragm mic setup, record 2 separate takes, then pan one hard left and one hard right. I combine the mid-side array with a DI signal to add body and warmth. For vocals, I use a large diaphragm condenser in most cases, with the same setup as mentioned before. The magic is more in the outboard. We run our vocals through a Vintech X73i preamp and EQ, into a CL1B compressor, then into a Slate Pro Dragon compressor. I like to commit to a sound on the way in, though it takes some experience to do this, as once recorded, the processing can't be undone. For live performance, I combine all the previous methods, including the phase technique. Don't forget that great productions start with a great song, followed by a great performance. After that, it's recording techniques, room treatment, mixing and mastering, and lastly gear. While expensive equipment does improve things, it should only be considered after everything before is checked off. At 0 Hour, we have lots of amazing equipment, but our priorities lie with the artist first and foremost. So with the right skills and experience, you can make great sounding home recordings. Thanks for sticking around to the end. I hope you've learned a few tricks of the trade in this masterclass. We will be making more content in the future, so if you want to stay updated, come join our mailing list at zerohour.uk.com/sign up.